At 7 in the morning, a truck backs into a construction site. The driver pulls a lever. A 40-yard steel box rolls slowly off the rails, hits the pavement, and lands with the sort of noise that makes everyone nearby instinctively look over. The truck leaves, and the dumpster just sits there. For the next few days, contractors throw in drywall, lumber, roofing material, broken cabinets, packaging, insulation, old flooring, bits of metal, and whatever else used to be part of a building. Eventually, the box is full. A truck comes back, hooks it, drags several tons of somebody else's garbage onto its chassis, drives away, and somewhere in that sequence, money changes hands. From the outside, this looks almost embarrassingly simple. Buy dumpster, rent dumpster, collect money, repeat. No inventory that becomes obsolete. No fashionable product that suddenly stops being fashionable. No restaurant ingredients spoiling overnight. No complicated manufacturing process. And the customer is literally paying you to take something they desperately want to get rid of. This sounds fantastic. Until you notice something strange. Some of the largest waste companies in North America own billions of dollars of trucks, containers, transfer stations, and landfills. They spend billions more maintaining and expanding those systems, and when they describe what makes their businesses valuable, they spend surprisingly little time talking about the steel boxes themselves. Waste Connections generated about $1.44 billion of industrial and construction roll-off revenue in 2025. Republic Services generated about $3.1 billion from large container collection, roughly 19% of its total revenue. So, this is not some tiny side business hiding behind household garbage collection. Roll-off containers are serious business. But then Waste Connections says something much more revealing. It says collection economics depend on route density, the equipment used, the weight of the waste, the distance to disposal, and the cost of disposal. And it says that as more customers are added along existing routes, revenue per routed truck increases and collection becomes more efficient and profitable. That changes the question, because now we are not really asking how profitable is a dumpster. We are asking how many economically attractive trips can one truck complete? How long does each dumpster disappear onto a customer's property? What does it cost when that dumpster comes back full? Where does the material go? And who owns that destination? Because a trash box is not actually the business. It is a steel invitation into a transportation network. And the hidden economics begin after the customer fills it. The roll-off rental looks like a rental business because the customer sees a physical object sitting outside. But financially, it behaves like several businesses stacked on top of each other. Part equipment rental, part trucking company, part logistics network, part commodity handling operation, and, if the owner is vertically integrated, part real estate and infrastructure business. Those pieces have very different economics. The dumpster itself is relatively passive. It requires paint, steel repairs, wheels, hinges, maybe new floors over time. But while the dumpster is sitting at a customer's property, the truck is somewhere else. The driver is somewhere else. The landfill is somewhere else. That separation is enormously important because one truck can support many containers, which means the operator does not make money by maximizing the number of trucks. Ideally, the operator wants enough containers spread around the market to keep a smaller number of expensive trucks continuously productive. This creates the first hidden ratio in the business. Containers per truck. Too few containers, and the truck is underused because there simply are not enough jobs to service. Too many containers, and capital gets trapped in steel boxes sitting on sites for weeks while customers slowly fill them. Neither extreme is ideal. The real asset is the turnover between the two. Consider what happens when somebody orders a dumpster. The operator first has to deliver an empty box. That consumes truck time. Then the box sits, maybe for 3 days, maybe 7, maybe 14, maybe longer. Eventually the customer requests removal. Now the operator consumes another truck trip. Then the truck travels to a transfer station, recycling facility, or landfill. It waits, it gets weighed. The load is dumped. A disposal charge may be incurred. Then the truck still has to go somewhere useful. maybe back to the yard, maybe directly to another customer, maybe to swap the empty container onto another project. Every wasted mile between those activities is economic leakage. This is why two dumpster companies charging exactly the same customer price can have completely different margins. One might drive 8 miles to the disposal facility. Another might drive 30. One might have 6 pickups clustered within the same part of town. Another might have 6 customers scattered across 3 counties. One might own the transfer station. Another might pay a competitor every time a truck crosses the scale. The customer sees the same steel rectangle. The owner sees 6 entirely different cost structures. And suddenly, location becomes one of the most valuable assets in the company. Waste Connections explicitly says the location of disposal sites can be critical because transporting garbage is expensive, and having disposal capacity close to the waste stream can create a competitive advantage. Garbage is unusual merchandise. It has negative value to the customer, but it is also heavy. It takes up enormous physical space, and nobody wants it hanging around. EPA's national estimate found that the United States generated roughly 600 million tons of construction and demolition debris in 2018, more than twice the amount of municipal solid waste generated that year. About 144 million tons of that C&D material ultimately went to landfills. That's why a dumpster company can appear beautifully simple from the outside. There is no shortage of stuff that needs removing. The harder question is whether that material can be moved economically. Imagine two contractors. Contractor A orders a 20-yard dumpster. The box sits for 10 days. It comes back lightly loaded. The job is 15 minutes from the yard and another 10 minutes from disposal. Contractor B orders the same box. It fills in one day, but it contains dense demolition debris, sits 45 minutes from the yard, and has to travel another hour to an approved disposal site. Contractor B looks like the better customer. Fast turnover, high activity, lots of demand. But the operator may prefer Contractor A because utilization without economics is just a busy way to lose money. Weight matters, distance matters, driver time matters, disposal matters, and the contents matter. Concrete is not drywall. Roofing shingles are not household junk. Clean metal may have recovery value. Mixed construction debris may require expensive processing or disposal. Certain prohibited materials can create an entirely different problem. So the owner is not merely renting cubic yards. The owner is accepting a future transportation and disposal obligation whose cost is partly unknown until the box comes back. That is why weight allowances, overage charges, prohibited material rules, fuel fees, and extended rental charges exist. They are not random annoyances invented by somebody in accounts receivable. They are attempts to transfer unpredictable economics back to the customer. Republic Services pricing descriptions make this explicit. Large container pricing can depend on the market, service frequency, equipment supplied, the volume or weight of material, transportation costs, and the cost of processing or disposal. Its temporary large container business is heavily tied to construction and demolition and can range from a single pickup to contracts lasting a year or longer. That temporary nature creates another contradiction. The dumpster itself might last for years. The customer relationship might last 5 days. Commercial waste collection often has recurring contracts. Roll-off work can disappear when the project ends. The steel is durable. The revenue is not. This is where construction cycles enter the story. During good years, dumpsters seem to be everywhere. Housing developments, renovations, warehouses, retail projects, factories, roof replacements, demolitions, road work. The operator buys another truck, orders more boxes, hires another driver. And because many of those costs were incurred before the next job arrives, growth can look extremely attractive until construction slows. In 2009, Waste Management experienced exactly that. Its industrial collection operations suffered the largest volume declines in its collection business as residential and commercial construction contracted across the United States. The company's collection business lost $622 million of revenue from lower volume. Third-party landfill revenue from volume fell 16%. The dumpsters had not stopped working. The building simply stopped producing enough waste to fill them. And that exposes the second hidden mechanism, operating leverage. A dumpster sitting in the yard does not require much fuel, but it still represents invested capital. The truck payment does not care that construction activity slowed. Insurance does not care. The yard lease does not care. Software does not care. Management salaries do not care. Some maintenance can be postponed. Some labor hours can be reduced. Fuel costs fall when trucks drive less. Disposal expense falls because fewer tons move. But a large portion of the business exists before the next customer calls. The result is a strange operating problem. When demand rises, each additional job can be very attractive because existing infrastructure absorbs more revenue. When demand falls, profits can decline much faster than the number of boxes suggests. Waste Connection still sees that cyclicality today. It says its business tends to produce lower revenue during periods when construction and demolition activity slows, particularly in winter. It estimates seasonal fluctuation between its highest and lowest quarters at roughly 10% under normal historical conditions, excluding a recession. In 2025, it also reported volume losses, partly caused by lower roll-off activity across several regions, even while pricing remained a major source of revenue growth. That is worth thinking about, because the obvious reaction to weaker volume is usually get more customers, but not every customer improves the system. Suppose a truck can comfortably complete 6 useful moves during a day because the jobs are close together. Now imagine management adds customers 40 miles away, revenue goes up, customer count goes up, the trucks look busier, but perhaps they can now complete only 4 economically useful moves because windshield time consumes the day. The company has technically grown, the network has become worse. This is why waste companies obsess over density. Casella Waste Systems describes technology investments in routing and onboard computers as tools for improving route density and economics. Waste Connections says additional customers on existing routes increase revenue per routed truck. The principle is almost identical to an airline. An airline does not primarily want more airplanes, it wants productive flights. A dumpster company does not primarily want more dumpsters, it wants profitable turns. The difference is that airplanes move themselves. Dumpsters wait for somebody with a hook lift truck, and those trucks are not trivial assets. Republic Services operated roughly 4,900 large container collection vehicles at the end of 2025. Their average age was about 8.8 years. Across residential, small container, and large container service, Republic operated approximately 17,800 collection vehicles. Once you see the business this way, the balance sheet starts looking different. Take Waste Connections. At the end of 2025, before accumulated depreciation and depletion, it reported roughly $1.44 billion of containers. That sounds enormous until you look beside it. Rolling stock was about $3.9 billion. Landfill site costs were about $6.1 billion. The visible boxes were only one layer of a much larger physical machine. There is even a strange numerical coincidence. Waste Connections' gross container cost was about $1.44 billion. Its industrial and construction roll-off revenue during 2025 was also about $1.44 billion. Those figures describe completely different things. The container figure includes broader container assets and represents historical gross asset cost, while the revenue figure is 1 year's roll-off sales. But the coincidence makes the point beautifully. The steel may produce years of service, but it requires an enormous supporting system to turn that steel into revenue. This is also where depreciation starts to matter, not because depreciation itself is a cash payment, it isn't. The cash left when the truck or dumpster was purchased. Accounting depreciation spreads part of that historical cost across future periods, but economically, the important question is whether the business will eventually need to replace those assets. A dumpster can be repaired. A truck eventually becomes an increasingly creative collection of maintenance invoices, so EBITDA can be useful. But EBITDA does not buy the replacement fleet. Waste management illustrates the scale. In 2025, the company generated about $6.0 billion of operating cash flow. It spent roughly $3.2 billion on capital expenditures. About $2.6 billion of that was classified as capital spending required to support the existing business, with the rest largely associated with sustainability growth investments. After capital spending and certain asset sale proceeds, Waste Management reported about $2.94 billion of free cash flow. That does not mean every dumpster operator needs to reinvest anything close to the same percentage. Waste Management owns an enormous integrated infrastructure network, but it shows why revenue minus wages minus fuel is not owner economics. Steel wears, hydraulics fail, trucks age, landfills consume capacity, transfer stations need equipment, environmental infrastructure requires investment, and if growth requires another truck before it produces another dollar of revenue, cash can disappear while the income statement still looks perfectly healthy. Now we reach the most important cost in the entire roll-off equation, the dump. A small independent dumpster operator can own the box, own the truck, own the customer relationship, and still hand part of the economics to somebody else every time a load leaves the truck. That payment is the tipping fee. Essentially, the operator pays for permission to put garbage somewhere. Once that happens, the logic of vertical integration becomes obvious. If a waste company owns the collection route and the landfill, one division can effectively send material into another asset inside the same economic system. The cash that would have left the company as a third-party disposal expense can instead remain within the network, subject to the true cost of operating the landfill. The industry calls this internalization. Republic Services says about 67% of the solid waste volume it collected in both 2024 and 2025 was disposed at landfill sites that it owned or operated. Waste Management reported internalization based on disposal cost above 71% during parts of 2025 and early 2026. And Waste Connections is unusually direct about why this matters. Its 2025 annual report says that, generally, the most profitable solid waste operators are vertically integrated or protected by long-term collection contracts. It gives three reasons. They can internalize collected waste, they can charge third-party haulers to use their disposal infrastructure, and they can use transfer stations to aggregate waste before moving it longer distances. That is the economic ladder. At the bottom, own a box. Next, own enough boxes to keep a truck productive. Then own enough local customers to create route density. Then control a transfer station. Then control disposal capacity. Each step removes somebody else's toll booth from your route. And each step requires dramatically more capital, regulation, and operational competence. This is why transfer stations deserve more attention than they get. A transfer station sounds boring because it is basically a place where garbage changes vehicles, but economically, it changes geography. Small collection trucks can deliver waste to a nearby transfer site. The material is consolidated, compacted, then moved in larger loads to a more distant landfill. Republic operated 255 transfer stations in 2025 and says they reduced transportation costs while extending the effective geographic reach of its landfills. When Republic's own trucks use those stations, it can retain disposal economics that might otherwise go to third parties. The transfer station turns distance from a hard barrier into an optimization problem that becomes increasingly valuable when nearby landfills disappear. Casella operates in the northeastern United States, where it says disposal capacity has tightened over the past decade as sites closed and more waste had to move by rail to out-of-state destinations. That scarcity helps explain Casella's strategy. The company is not merely trying to buy more garbage trucks. Its stated priorities include improving collection profitability, densifying markets through acquisitions, and protecting long-term disposal capacity. Over the 5 fiscal years through 2025, Casella said it increased total landfill capacity by roughly 32%. During 2025, it acquired 9 businesses, representing about $115 million of annualized revenue. Collection pricing increased 5%, and its investor materials specifically connect routing technology, route density, and acquisition integration with better collection economics. That is what successful expansion looks like in this industry. Not random growth, density, adjacency, control. A dumpster operator acquiring the competitor next door may be worth more than acquiring an equally profitable company 80 miles away, because the nearby acquisition can remove duplicate routes, fill unused truck capacity, increase bargaining power, add containers without proportionally adding dispatch infrastructure, and perhaps redirect more tonnage toward facilities the buyer already controls. In other words, geography creates synergies that accounting spreadsheets often describe only afterward. This is why waste businesses can become unusually attractive local monopolies without technically being monopolies. The steel container itself is easy to copy. A competitor can buy one. The truck can be purchased. A website can be launched in an afternoon, but reproducing a dense network of long-standing contractor relationships, permitted facilities, drivers, dispatch systems, disposal agreements, and local route knowledge is much harder. The competitive advantage is not the dumpster, it is everything the dumpster touches. But vertical integration introduces its own danger. Owning the disposal site keeps economics inside the company. It also keeps the liability inside the company. And one landfill in California demonstrates just how violent that reversal can become. Chiquita Canyon, a 639-acre landfill north of Los Angeles. For decades, it accepted municipal and construction-related waste. Then, beginning around 2022, something started happening underground. A subsurface elevated temperature event developed inside part of the landfill. The exact underlying cause has been difficult to determine, but regulators documented heat, excessive leachate, odors, and changes in landfill gas. EPA reported thousands of odor complaints from surrounding communities and determined in early 2024 that conditions presented an imminent and substantial endangerment. Waste Connections, the landfill's owner, was simultaneously dealing with regulatory constraints on how much material the site could accept and whether it could assess additional airspace. Then the economics broke. Waste Connections concluded that continuing active disposal was no longer economically feasible. Chiquita Canyon stopped accepting waste at the end of December 2024, but closing the landfill did not make the obligation disappear. Quite the opposite. Waste Connections recorded roughly $480.8 million of charges to adjust Chiquita's closure and post-closure liability. It also recorded another $116.1 million impairment against the landfill's carrying value. Almost $600 million. Not because the company needed a slightly newer dumpster, because an asset whose economic value depended on decades of future disposal capacity could no longer operate the way management had expected. This is the dark side of vertical integration. A landfill can be incredibly valuable because nobody can manufacture another one overnight. Permitting takes time. Land is scarce. Communities resist new sites. Transportation distance matters. Existing disposal capacity therefore becomes strategically powerful, but the same barriers that protect the asset also make failure painful. A dumpster can be sold. A truck can be auctioned. A closed landfill remains exactly where it is, and environmental obligations can continue long after the last paying customer drives away. Waste Connections' own filing says landfill completion or closure does not end environmental obligations and can require continuing closure, post-closure, and remediation spending. So now the ownership question becomes more complicated. At first, we thought owning the landfill was obviously superior. Why pay another company a tipping fee forever? But integration trades variable expense for capital commitment and long-duration risk. That can produce superior economics when the asset works, and spectacular liabilities when it doesn't. This pattern repeats everywhere in ownership. You can lease the yard or own it, lease trucks or buy them, finance containers or purchase them with cash, outsource overflow jobs or add permanent capacity, pay third-party disposal or own the dump. Each decision changes which risks remain variable and which become fixed. This matters enormously when debt enters the picture. Debt can make a stable waste business more valuable to equity owners because recurring cash flows support financing. But debt also claims cash before the owner gets it. A business might produce attractive EBITDA while trucks need replacing. Interest comes due and acquisitions consume more capital. GFL Environmental offers a huge scale example. In 2025, GFL sold its environmental services business at an $8 billion enterprise value. It planned to use up to $3.75 billion of proceeds to reduce debt. Management estimated that debt reduction would lower annualized cash interest by roughly $200 million. GFL retained a $1.7 billion equity interest in the business it sold. That transaction was far broader than dumpster rental, but the capital lesson applies directly. Owning a good operation is not enough. The financing structure used to own it determines how much of the economics eventually reaches the owner. A dumpster bought entirely with cash has one return profile. A dumpster financed alongside a truck, facility, and acquisition loan has another. Same steel, different equity. Now let's move in the opposite direction. What if you remove almost all the physical ownership? Dumpsters.com presents itself not as a national owner of every truck and dumpster it coordinates, but as a managed service provider. Customers can call one company for jobs around the country. The company then coordinates service through a network of local providers. On its own website, Dumpsters.com says it works with more than 5,000 service partners across all 50 states and has facilitated more than 1.5 million dumpster rentals. Those are company reported figures, not independently audited public company metrics. Think about what disappeared from that model. You do not necessarily need to own a landfill in every market. You do not need a truck in every city. You do not need hundreds of thousands of steel containers distributed nationally. Instead, you control demand, customer acquisition, pricing data, billing, account management, scheduling, vendor relationships, and the interface between somebody who needs a dumpster and somebody nearby who owns one. The underlying hauler still takes the asset risk, still repairs the truck, still pays the driver, still handles the physical container, still deals with the local disposal market. The intermediary owns coordination. That is the strategic twist. At the start of the story, the dumpster looked like the asset, then the truck looked like the asset, then the route, then the landfill. Now the customer relationship itself starts looking like the asset, and the industry structure begins making sense. The local operator may have the strongest physical economics because it understands every road, disposal facility, and contractor in its territory. The vertically integrated regional player can have stronger margins because more waste stays inside its own system. The national broker can scale customer coverage without reproducing the entire physical network. Different owners are harvesting different layers of the exact same dumpster transaction. This also explains why there is no single correct way to enter the business. A new local operator might begin with a handful of containers and one truck. At that stage, the critical question is survival. Can the truck stay productive? Can disposal costs be passed through? Can customers be clustered? Can the company maintain equipment without the owner pretending his own labor is free? Then the problem changes. Once truck capacity starts filling, the owner has to decide whether the next dollar goes into more boxes or another truck. Buying another dumpster is relatively easy. Buying another truck creates capacity, but new capacity is dangerous if the customer density does not exist. One truck operating at high utilization may be wonderful. Two trucks operating at half utilization may create the same customer capacity with twice the mechanical anxiety. Then comes the temptation to expand geographically. Another town, another county, another metro. Revenue opportunities appear enormous, but every expansion stretches the route. And route density is one of the few advantages a small operator can possess against a giant. A local business does not need 17,000 trucks to win. It needs the right truck in the right place. The small operator can know which landfill has the shortest Tuesday queue, Which roofing contractor fills a 30-yard container faster than promised? Which customers consistently overload? Which neighborhoods require permits? Which transfer station accepts what? Which projects need Saturday swaps? That information rarely appears on the income statement, but it determines the income statement. Then comes pricing. Dumpster pricing can look like a commodity. Customer searches online, compares three quotes, takes the cheapest. So the obvious strategy is discounting. That can be lethal because a dumpster rental has costs the customer cannot see. If the disposal fee rises, the cheaper rental becomes less profitable. If the average load gets heavier, it becomes less profitable. If traffic adds 20 minutes to every trip, it becomes less profitable. If a competitor opens a better positioned transfer station, the route economics change. If the operator adds low-priced customers outside its dense territory, growth itself can compress margin. This is why pricing discipline appears repeatedly in public waste company filings. Casella said solid waste pricing increased 4.9% in 2025, even while underlying volume declined slightly. Waste Connections generated hundreds of millions of dollars of price-led revenue growth in 2025, despite volume pressures that included weaker roll-off activity. The strategy was not simply move more garbage. It was to make sure the garbage moved at an adequate return. That sounds obvious. It isn't, because operators naturally see idle containers and want to fill them. Idle steel feels wasteful, and sometimes it is, but a badly priced rental can be worse. The operator commits the container, commits future truck capacity, accepts disposal price exposure, potentially delays a better job, and adds another service promise to dispatch. The box is occupied, the calendar is full, the owner feels busy, and cash barely moves. That is why utilization must always be paired with yield. A hotel understands this. Selling every room for $10 would produce magnificent occupancy and a terrible hotel. Dumpster operators face the same problem in uglier scenery. Then there is working capital. Many consumer dumpster rentals are paid before or around delivery, which can create attractive cash timing, but larger commercial accounts may demand payment terms. Meanwhile, drivers, fuel vendors, mechanics, and disposal facilities still expect payment. Rapid growth can therefore create a financing problem even when each individual job is profitable. The company adds containers, adds trucks, adds payroll, adds receivables. Revenue rises. Cash gets tighter. Growth eats money before it produces money. This is one reason established waste businesses with reliable access to capital can consolidate fragmented local operators. The buyer can spread administration over a larger revenue base, use existing disposal facilities, increase route density, standardize maintenance, and finance equipment more efficiently, but acquisitions only work if the operational theory is real. Casella closed no acquisitions during 2025 after 8 the year before. Its strategy repeatedly emphasizes geographic overlap and strategic adjacency rather than collecting random businesses around a map. The principle is simple. In waste, nearby revenue is usually worth more than distant revenue. A customer 20 houses from another customer is not economically identical to a customer 20 miles away. This is what people miss when they value a dumpster business, only with revenue multiples. Revenue tells you how much customers paid. It does not tell you how far the truck drove. It does not tell you how long the boxes sat. It does not tell you whether disposal was internalized. It does not tell you the age of the fleet. It does not tell you whether maintenance was deferred. It does not tell you whether the owner is personally dispatching trucks for free. It does not tell you whether one contractor represents 30% of the work. And it definitely does not tell you whether the landfill down the road has 3 years of capacity left or 30. That last point is especially important. Waste Connections estimated that the average remaining life of its owned operational landfills and certain life of site-operated landfills was about 31 years at the end of 2025. That is not merely real estate. That is decades of permitted capacity. And the company continues pursuing expansions at certain locations because each additional unit of permitted airspace extends the economic life of an infrastructure network already connected to customers and collection routes. This is one of the strangest concepts in the entire industry. A landfill sells empty space, but unlike an office building, every sale permanently consumes the inventory. The customer pays you to make part of your asset disappear. A dumpster is reusable. Landfill airspace is not. That means the integrated waste company is running two clocks. The dumpster should turn faster. The landfill should be monetized intelligently over decades. Those objectives can conflict. Aggressively chasing every available ton improves current utilization, but scarce disposal capacity may be more valuable later. The highest quality operator therefore manages not one asset, but a chain of assets with completely different useful lives. A dumpster may last years, a truck perhaps, a decade or more with proper maintenance. A customer project may last a week, a contractor relationship may last decades, and a permitted landfill can shape an entire regional network for a generation. That is why the apparent simplicity disappears the deeper you go. The homeowner sees a box, the driver sees a route, dispatch sees a schedule, the mechanic sees a hydraulic system, the landfill sees tons, the accountant sees depreciation, the lender sees collateral and cash flow. The owner has to see all of them at once, so return to that construction site. 7 in the morning. The steel box lands. The truck drives away. At the beginning, that looked like success. A rented asset, a paying customer. Simple. Now look again. How much did acquiring that customer cost? How far did the truck travel? Was that delivery paired with another pickup nearby? How many days are included before extra rent begins? What material is going into the container? How heavy will it be? Where will it be dumped? How long will the truck wait there? Who owns that facility? How much capital is tied up in the box? How much capital is tied up in the truck? When will each need replacing? And once the dumpster is finally empty, is there another customer close enough to make the next turn profitable? Those are the economics, not the box, the cycle. The great dumpster businesses do not merely rent more steel. They compress distance, they increase turns, they concentrate customers, they protect pricing, they control disposal, and they allocate capital so the entire network becomes more productive each time it grows. That is why one operator can own 20 dumpsters and struggle while another builds a regional empire around exactly the same rectangles of welded steel. The boxes are visible, the network is not, but the network is where the business lives. Because owning a trash box is easy, the real business is controlling the profitable journey from empty box to full box to empty box again. And if there's another business you've always wondered about, how it actually makes money, where the costs hide, and what can make the whole thing break, put it in the comments. Subscribe if you want to see which one we invest